Hello folks, this is Soul with another video. It has been, I think, a few years, but now is a good time as any to ask and answer, and sort of answer this question. How do you run a guild in World of Warcraft like now, now in 2026? I'm not going to have objective answers for you. The cornerstone of my commentary comes from my experience being part of the same guild for what, like 19 years now, and I almost ran it for that long. And things start to get blurry when your guild goes as far back as Bush 2. So maybe I won't inspire anything out of you, but maybe there will be some insights to glean. Please like the video, subscribe, and so on and so forth. And if it turns out I can separate these into different subjects, use the navigation thing to get to where you want to go, but otherwise, wish me luck. I think step 0 of the whole guild thing or group thing, whether it's guilds or if you're trying to make a group or whatever, you gotta first ask yourself, like, do you really want to do it? Like, are you sure? Do you know what this entails? It sounds weird to say it like that, but the game, World of Warcraft and the general culture of today has moved towards this notion of social independence. So I'll claim very confidently that the vast majority of grouping in World of Warcraft is done, and like pickup groups or pugs to run PvE content. And there are lots of ways to do this. You can do like the whole pre-made group tool. You can use Discord groups. You can use trade chat if you're in for the throwback and all that. It's compelling because this frees up, how do I want to say this? Like, it frees up the need to do that one weird trick that gamers hate, and that's to build lasting relationships. Oh my god, anything but that. So for some, it's easier to do it the other way, so to go the whole pug route. So those folks will roll their, whatever is the favorite class or spec that is most likely to be picked up. They're going to want to be super knowledgeable about a dungeon or a raid or whatever, before they even have actual experience doing it, so let alone have a clue how it's like doing it with other people. And then of course there's just grinding the queue, try to sign up, fail, and try over and over again, failed runs, and then eventually you just kind of grind your way to victory. Sometimes the notion of being in a guild or community is romanticized a bit, because we hear stories about, oh, these folks, they banded together and they remained linked for years and years, and it does happen. It's not like guilds and static groups are totally dead. It can be great, it can be wonderful, when it works out. But there are a lot of gamers out there who don't give themselves the opportunity to play the social side of this game for all manner of reasons, because maybe they tried and they had a bad experience and they don't want to do that again, or they just straight up struggle with social skills. The one I hear most often is, I don't have time for that anymore. I've got my own family, so when it's time to play World of Warcraft, I just want to pick up and play, and that's totally fair. There's no debate to be had with this whole thing about pugs versus guilds. Your goal as a would-be leader person is to create and have this place where these long-term relationships can be nurtured. So while this might not be a case of like a purely social or roleplay or housing guild, in the case of PvE progression, it took me a long time to say that, there's a whole segment of player, a would-be guild leader like yourself, you'll just need to not worry about those people. You won't be able to get them. Like, you can't control people's schedules. You can only make one and then invite people over. All of the, it kind of sucks to hear, but all the guild revamps and the possible fancy schmancy community tools and incentives and prizes and all that stuff, anything that Blizzard could ever come up with, it won't make a difference, because those people just don't want to be in a guild. Meaning the audience that you are seeking out is not going to be that easy to find anyway. By being the guild leader, you're playing this game of, it sounds terrible, you're playing this game of managing people. I guess in a way, in a way you don't have to care. Like, if you know you're a jackass, but you still want to run a guild, that's going to kind of reflect on the kinds of members you bring in and how well you can hold on to them. So it's kind of a necessary reminder, like, you're not just playing World of Warcraft anymore. You're playing the social game. You're mostly communicating to your group from outside World of Warcraft. It's not just out of sight, out of mind when you log out, especially early on when you're trying to put this together. Like, for me, I'm socially awkward in real life and in game, and I'm highly introverted too. But even then, most of my professional work as an adult has been around people, whether I'm doing like customer facing stuff or if I am collaborating with coworkers. So from that, I had to learn soft skills, that is how to get along with folks and how to keep your cool. There are de-escalation techniques and so on and so forth. There are a lot of books and guides that cover these topics. I guess another way toward it is, follow the golden rule. Be the kind of guild leader or officer or community manager or whatever. Be the kind of person that you want to work under. It's a combination of being who you are with the qualities that people want. Just being good at the game, that ain't enough. It might be indispensable for getting that one boss kill, but it's not going to be the glue that keeps people together. Because the guild will say that I'm not that good at the game anyway, but clearly they stuck around for this. This could be a touchy topic, but you might want to consider how important it is to, how do I want to say this? You might want to consider how important it is for real life values to be shared within your guild or community, or even have that be a strong part of its identity. This is a really sensitive topic to broach because, by and large, our I don't want to say whatever our religious beliefs or political views, it has nothing to do with our damage, right? But as a would-be leader, the very reason you're doing this might be to make a safe space for single dads or Dodgers fans or members of the LGBTQ community or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It just comes with its own unique challenges. Like, your group might be inclusive for everyone, but if it happens to be called Taylor Swift's fan club, you're definitely going to bring some people in while definitely turning others away. But what about the day-to-day when it comes to this whole, bring real life stuff into it? Bringing in parts of our personal life into the guild, it's part of the natural bonding process. Just like how, like, here's how things went during my job, or here's what's going on with the family or the kids, and you're talking about this stuff between polls, you're talking smack during trash, whatever. And we'll know as much about each other as we let on. Now, it's never really become a problem in my guild, but there are a few times where policy has made some folks feel uncomfortable, but that was just like one flashpoint. Other examples could be how, like, a guildmate's kid might have learned something funny in school, and people will be like, oh, well, shucks, I didn't learn things that way. And someone else might be like, well, that's because, nowadays your country's education system sucks. And then it's like, well, how did we get here? So sometimes you're going to have to, like, curb that sort of behavior and step in. I guess I'm telling you to prepare for the possibility where you may have to, tell these people, or kind of bring these people in line, like I said, and say, like, hey, we're here for our shared love of the game, and let's leave some of this real life stuff at the door. There's a balance between censorship, like, oh my God, you're silencing me and all that, and of course trying to keep true to the overall vibes of this World of Warcraft guild. If it really seems like someone isn't gelling with the group, then you probably need to make a decision on that fast and basically ask them to leave. I made the mistake of being too nice in the hopes that some individuals would eventually align with the guild, but when it doesn't, that just ends up making everyone else feel uncomfortable. So it's important to keep an eye out for how your fellow members treat each other, and do a lot of listening. I've watched a good bit, and I've seen that largely a PvE guild, it doesn't get much momentum, when you're trying to build it up. It doesn't get much momentum when you need to spam at folks in trade so you can get that charter signed, and then you spam for members because you're like, hey guys, I want to be a raid guild and I want to push for cutting edge and I happen to have this kind of experience. Oh my god, look at me. That's likely a case of being overly ambitious. A suggestion, it's not the law, right? But a suggestion is you probably want to make a guild when you already have this kind of core group put together. Whether it's friends or a solid party that is just too big to be a party. Maybe it's a collection of members who are about to break away from a previous guild and you're trying to make a new one. One scenario, starting your guild might be like at the party level, and just trying to make good experiences for people in this party level because, hey, this run was successful. And someone during the run, someone said something funny and everyone laughed, and that turns out to be a bit of a connection. It's a commonality you can build from. I'm not saying it's up to you to be the funny one, like I am not very funny. But if you can identify when these moments happen, then it's like, oh wow, we were kind of like getting along pretty well together. Let's plan for another run, planting that seed. And I mentioned earlier, there's got to be a kind of a careful balance. You got to work on not just getting that one really good player, because that one player might have a very different personality from everyone else. And, kind of the goal is you want all your players to mostly get along. Human beings do tend to compromise and conform a bit to their group. It is okay to want the culture of your group to be a certain way, and people are, of course, free to up and leave if that's not their vibe. It's not as great of an idea to try to constantly conform the group as you're getting like these new members in, because then you might end up with a kind of group that morphs away from what people joined for in the first place, and then you end up losing people without quite realizing why before it's too late. One of the more effective and hopefully fun ways of attracting folks to your guild or your community is through example. So you can use pickup groups as a recruitment tool. Even if you don't have a guild yet, as long as you at least have a core group and, very importantly, a schedule, do that scheduled run, and then as you're building your group, see if anyone in the group finder wants to join in. This probably isn't a great idea during like a progression night, but when the gearing isn't important and you guys can like carry folks or whatever, sure, let the randoms in, and while you're doing so, openly recruit. The results will always vary, but I think the effectiveness comes from the time and place that you're doing it, because the people who are on the pre-made group tool at that time are looking for something to do, while you guys are doing your raids and your keys or whatever. So, and also if you happen to be advertising your RP or your housing neighborhood, and you want to do events, do those events, put it on record, do screenshots, do videos and the like, and post that stuff everywhere, because a lot of the time when people are looking for like a social kind of thing, like it's hard to give proof. You can't do logs of like how awesome and social your guild is, but the best thing you can do would be like putting up videos, telling stories, things like that. So it sort of goes without saying, it's both a strength and a responsibility to do things as a guild when possible. Outside of that really big event or the weekly raid or the dungeon night, it's kind of anything goes, because a lot of World of Warcraft these days can be enjoyed solo, and we should give that freedom to everyone. I mean, yeah, we can do ritual sites alone, but it does go a lot faster when you have even just like one partner. That's how it is for a lot of PvE content. But also, I'm not saying that you gotta do things with the guild all the time, but to just sort of monitor the balance on off nights. Like see when people happen to be doing that random key or popping onto like chats, or if they're doing a collection spree, or if they're just like hanging out doing housing stuff. I think what's helped me in my guild, especially for this long, is to be a sort of monolith. Now, that's an impossible demand, because lives change, including our own. But I think it's helped a lot to be very consistent over the years. We've had the same kind of raid schedule, the same kind of loot system, if you can call it that, the same leadership. Hey, and somewhere in this bit, I want to include how important it is to build trust with the guild, which lines up with this whole idea of staying consistent. Like, for example, we're just an AOTC guild. We just do heroic ahead of the curve. And I have a very regular pattern whenever we do a season. We do normal for a while until we get ready for heroic, and then we get AOTC, hooray, and then we do raid achievements. Then for the rest of the season, we do what I call reprogression, where folks can run whatever alts they want and switch up roles and change mains and whatever, and then we do normal or heroic all over again, which typically results in a similar vibe to our original progression. Of course, you guys can do whatever you want to, set up an event or roulette, or there's all sorts of like neat ideas that people can do when normal progression is done and you want to like give yourselves a little something to do. That's just what we happen to do. Mythic, though, that's totally out of the question because, well, they know how much well, yeah, it's pretty much out of the question because like the guild, they know how much I hate conforming to a raid size. I hated it before flex rating became a thing. I hate it now. And I know that there is a flexible mythic thing coming in this upcoming patch, but honestly, even if flex mythic became a more regular thing, I'd be very hesitant at engaging with it because then I'd be asking my team to take those the earlier sense of completion, of being done with the raid on heroic, and then pushing that goalpost back because, hey guys, now we're a mythic guild. Ooh. Now I know it would be unfair if I didn't at least try it once, but I know I'd be playing a balancing act, getting the team excited over a new challenge and then burning them out under this renewed ambition. But the theme with all that I just said is consistency, because some guildmates, they just up and stop playing and they come back months or years later and they can rely on the same schedule. Or if people have questions, random folk can ask a fellow guildmate, oh, what are the schedules and all that, and they'll be able to know because they can rely on the schedule that we had made months or years ago. Like I remember way back during Cataclysm, this was during Firelands, and inside the guild there was this clique of pretty skilled players, and they had joined like a few months prior, I think during the previous tier or season or whatever, and all of a sudden they tried to hold the raid hostage. Okay, actually I'm being dramatic when I'm saying it like that, but what happened was mid-raid they just kind of stopped all of a sudden. They're like, yo, we're going to stop, we're going to leave unless you like kick this and that person, and then bring in our friends instead. Otherwise we're going to leave. And I said, okay, fine. There's the door. So, and then it took a few weeks to recover from that. And then we cleared Firelands and that was the end of the story. So a couple things happened there. Like one, I'm staying consistent to the values of our guild where, we want to get stuff done, but we're not going to be so try hard that we're going to pressure folks to fill up every vault slot and really get in people's faces because they didn't follow the 5-minute guide. And then while we're at that, in fact, as a guild, we raid semi-blind. Outside of raid timers, I have no idea what boss and whatever abilities do, and I don't look at the dungeon journal until I've at least seen the abilities that are hitting us, and I still can't figure it out on my own. And that's a value for us, figuring things out on our own. And some people on the team, they do look at the guides, or they'll look at they'll happen to like pug kills ahead of us, and of course I'm not going to hold it against them, but I'm also not going to I'm not going to pay attention to whatever strat that they start spouting off. I'm just kind of like la la la. But for the most part, everyone knows how things work here. Your attitude also spills over to the rest of your guild, your RP group, your community. I'm not the ideal example to use here because as a content creator as well, for World of Warcraft, I'm as chill as you can get, and toxic positivity, that's the thing that I know I struggle with. But we are surrounded by algorithms that typically push content that elicits some level of negativity, directly or indirectly. There are complaints against the game, obviously, but I'm also talking about content that pushes what the current meta is. For example, like what's happening to your class or spec during this patch or during this week. New guildmates, whenever I get those, they'll ask me like 90% of the time, like, "Hey, dude, what class or spec do we need for the team?" It's a very fair question. They want to contribute in the best way possible, but I tend to tell these folks, or I tend to tell the team, whenever this topic comes up, like, "Yo, just bring to the table the thing they feel they most like, and we'll give them the most fun." Uh, and that's a dangerous ask because I don't know what I'm gonna get, and they might happen to suck at it. But I also want people in my group to, play how they want to play, give them that sort of freedom while reminding them that I just want them to bring out the best in whatever decision they make. As a result, we have these pretty big performance deltas around our DPS players. But I would say when it comes to like how we measure people's performance, it's like 20% class balance, it's 30% strategy, and then 50% just handling mechanics. So bring what you want, follow the plan, and stay out of fire. We tend to get pretty good results that way, and I try to recognize everyone's contributions, even if they might have been only there for like 40% of the fight. And some of those people know who they are. Haha. I feel like I've talked up the what-to-dos and the struggles and the anecdotes, so it's like, okay, what's the point of running the group again? I've been doing this guild thing for almost 20 years. Think about that. Bum-ass kid playing the same game, seeing people come and go for like almost 20 years. What do I get out of it? It's a little bit like me answering the question, like, what do I get out of being a content creator, which only barely makes a living. And in these like 18 or 19 years so far, I've been able to connect with hundreds of people. I've bared the weight of responsibility to guide folks through this weird world of Warcraft. And these people, they set their schedules out of their busy days so that we can play video games together. About two of them, approximately two other people, they're still around since almost the beginning. A lot of folks stick around for years until it's time to move on. And most of these folks, I still maintain connections through like socials or Discord or whatever. So we've contributed and we built this home with memories that go beyond the achievements and the loot that we've got. Kind of why I'm into content creation. At the end of the day, I can see the results of my job. The product is out there. I'm seeing it help and inform people. I see people react to like the house designers, to what they put together and what I put a spotlight on. I guess I feel like I'm making a difference. World of Warcraft, it's just a video game, but having this kind of space that we made to help people enjoy it, that I feel like is a very special kind of reward. And that made it really sound like I'm wrapping it up. So I guess that's it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.